I've been looking forward to editing this video and getting it out to you. Adding Scenics to the landscape has been a large kind of milestone I've been looking forward to getting to, and I'm going to start out with this static grass applicator by WWS. I'm Tris, and if you haven't already seen these videos so far, then let me get you up to date. We started out building up a board. We added track. We had to make sure that the track worked, and after that we added wires to it so then we could control the power. And from there we then added a back scene, added the landscape, added a road, and here we are. Now we're gonna add some static grass. I'm starting out using some of the Woodland Scenics. I think it's about 2mm. It's very short, this darker colour. So basically, if you want to go and add static grass to your layer, normally start out with a base layer. I'm using craft sealer, which is basically matte varnish to hold it on. You could use PVA glue. There's a whole range of things you could use to glue this down. And I'm gonna add a base layer. Some people will add in some kind of the normal turfs that you can get before doing any static grass. But as I already have this dark layer, I'm just gonna go straight with the static grass. I've seen WWS put static grass on a banana, and you wouldn't know it's a banana. Well, you kind of could because of the shape, but you don't see any of the yellow underneath. So I'm coating this, so we're going to add the base layer. I'm not too keen on a lot of the static grasses that are out there on their colourings. Personal preference, it doesn't really matter what you like. It's got to be just suiting your taste. It doesn't matter what brand. Just have a look around. There's a load of different colours and look at what other people have used. I use this because it's almost my sacrificial layer. It adds a body underneath that hides a little bit of the brown that the coconut liner, which is from a hanging basket, is made from a coconut hair. I kind of see it as. It will kind of dull that down a little bit. So when I come and use my GreenScene's static grass, which I find to be just exactly what I'm after whenever I'm doing static grass, using this will mean that I don't have to use as much GreenScenes later on. That's what I'm thinking anyway, at least. The applicators work in a kind of an easy way. It has a battery that goes into it, a PP3 battery, and that powers up. I guess there's a cord in it that goes a little bit high voltage, and using a crocodile clip which is attached to a wire that's part of it, we put that close to wherever you're static grassing. It's very simple. And then with that, then creating a charge as it goes down, because obviously one end's got one end of the, let's say, positive, the other one's negative. You end up having this grass that's standing up as it's landing. So then you have this spiky glass. It's statically standing up, which is great. And so you put the static grass into the top of the applicator. Sometimes it clumps up in a little ball, and you can mess around with it with your fingers, give it a little shuffle around, give it a stir. Some people even put it into a kind of like blender type situation so they can churn it back up. It seems to be fine. If you just shake it around, it comes out. Those balls do end up coming out. You just have to shake it a lot. You know, getting a bit tired sometimes, so you have to swap hand. But we put it on, and I'm using my matte varnish. And make sure, if you're using things like matte varnish and stuff like that, do it in a ventilated space. Put a mask on. You don't want to be breathing that stuff in. The bridge you would have seen on previous episodes if you haven't already watched this. I'd started building it up, and I hadn't really decided what I want to do, but as you can see, I've got a double back on it. I've got the arch now stuck in place, and I've primed it with some of the, I think it's red oxide primer. And what I find is this is a great base for when you're doing brickwork. After that, I add a series of coloured bricks onto it. So using my Vallejo paint, I get out a mixture of brown, this kind of dirty red. I've got a salmon, and it's up to you. You could add in some more colours there. You know, if you look at brick buildings, they're not all perfectly red. Well, some of them are. You know, we've even got a bit of orange here that I'm going to use to add a bit more flair to the colour, because sometimes you see some really bright coloured looking bricks. And with that, it's usually using a fine paintbrush. Doesn't really matter if you slip onto another brick. it's kind of, you just continue painting the other brick as well, because they were both bright in this case. But I worked my way around very patiently. I know some of you might feel I haven't got time for painting each individual brick, but give it a go. It's actually quite an enjoyable experience when you make sure that you stay patient, you work your way through, and do a non-uniform type painting method. So just whatever ones take your fancy as you go, little ones, big ones, it doesn't really matter, it'll be good. As you go through it, consider the fact that you're going to be adding other colours, so it's not going to be just red with orange bits everywhere. Actually, if you then went to the next stage, this is okay, because I'm going to be adding a wash, okay, and I'm not going to be going for a lighter wash, I'll be going for a dark wash, because I always find when I do the light washes, I spend a lot of time messing around and doing this project, trying to get it ready in time for the Jubilee open day that the club has actually now had when releasing this. We did all the recording before the obviously the club open day, and now I'm going through the videos, editing and exporting. I did have someone comment to say that I've missed the open day. I'm like, fine. Now I've added all the different colours onto it, I'm going to put a wash over the whole lot. I'm using Agrac's Earthshade, so it will put a murky browny colour in, because when you look at some bridges, you can't actually see that lighter colour of the mortar. So I wanted to try this for the first time, and the whole point of this whole layout is to try some new things that I've not done before, and perfect maybe some of the things that I've already done that I'm not sure about. So I had lots of little dark colours in, dark splotches in, and we end up blending all the different colours in and make the bridge look kind of quite nice. I had some little smears here where you would have had lots of water coming down over each time it rained, and it'd be dirty. And after that, I give it a dry brush of salmon, and that's just to pick out the highlights. It picks out all these little edges of the bricks to then make it just have a little bit more to see, a bit more detail popping out when the sun's shining on it, when the light's on it, when you're looking at it. And if you go too much with this, I guess you could give it a dry brush with some of the original darker colours if you want to, or you could re-come over with the wash. You know, that's for you to kind of have a little play with and figure out. I'm not obviously perfect at this, but I'm kind of liking what I've done here. Maybe I could have put some of the lighter wash going in at points, so we had a couple of light bits of mortar, but ultimately this is going to be a non-centerpiece type thing. You know, it's going to be one of the portals where the loco goes through and comes out of. Once that dried anyway, we started looking at painting the tops of the, I don't know what we call the wall, and I'm not sure what each of these bits are called, is the part of the design of a bridge. But I use a cream colour, which I will be putting a wash on afterwards, and I work my way over. I find that when you do these types of colours, you want to put it on thick, because you're thinking, well, it's not, you know, the pigment of the red you can still see through, but instead do a thin layer that's watered down, and then let that dry, and then do another thin layer. It's only going to cost you another 10 minutes, 15 minutes ultimately once it has dried, and then you'll be happy about it, because you end up with textures that aren't part of the model. You know, you've added it in with the paint, it's got thick, so you keep the detail of those little ribs to segregate each of the paving slabs. And after that, very carefully, I do a very watered down black wash, and I work it over just to knock off the edge of that white. I don't need it to be so bright, and I come over until I'm happy. So we do this, let it dry. You can do it a bit more, and if you really want to, you can add some weathering powders, whatever you like. You know, I'm not an expert on these kind of types of things, but I'm able to dull down the whites using a black wash. If any of you have been to a heritage line, you'll see on the tunnel portals there's always a bit of smoke. You know, the ash that comes out the top of it, it always kind of leaves a stubborn black kind of mark above it. So I wanted to add some of that into this, just to simulate what you see when you see that. You know, the loco's been coming through, all the smoke kind of bellows out from the other side, and you end up having this nice black weathered area that I've got here, and you can go to your heart's content in this and make it absolutely filthy if you want to, but I just thought I'd focus around the centre and just work in my brush and see how it comes out. Nice and simple, really. And yeah, think it looks okay. Have a go yourself when you do your bridge next time. We're on to effectively stage 2. We want to add the longer static grass now. The matte varnish that was underneath is dried, so now it's quite tough. Yes, you can still see some of the coconut liner, but we're now going to go on to the next stage, adding the GreenScene's grass, and I'm using their 4mm, or is it medium, same thing as far as I understand, spring, and I also use a mix of summer. They're kind of quite a similar colour, I feel, when I look at the two, but they do look a little bit different when you see them both put down. But I like to have a little bit of variation, and I do add in some of the Woodland Scenics colours here and there where I fancy it, where I want to have a bit of burnt grass or whatever. So what I do is I do a layer, and if I want to I can spray over the same bit again using the matte varnish. We don't even have to wait for it to dry. You spray up all the areas that you need to, and we come back over with some more static grass, and you can build it up, and if you wanted to you could just keep going and the static grass builds up onto the other bits of static grass, and you get a nice depth of this static grass. And yeah, you can get a bit of satisfaction from this, because if you just did a layer, let it dry and think that's what I'm going to do, sometimes it just looks a little bit too uniform. So you can kind of mix it up a little bit more, but we will be adding in some other bits later on, like trees and things, so it's not all going to just be grass, because this mound doesn't look that realistic. But once we add other things, it kind of hides that. Again, working my way around, what we do is speed it up. You can listen to a bit of music if you like, and we'll enjoy seeing the static grass going down. What I do after doing this stage, everything's quite uniform at the moment and its spikiness, you're going to mess around with it a little bit with your fingers. It's still soft, so be careful you don't go and disturb it too much, but just have a little wiggle through as if you're trying to, I don't know, irritate someone. You're just flicking their hair or something. But yeah, we keep on going and I'll speed it up for you. static grassing being done, I wanted to slide in our tunnel portal because we need to start looking at adding some, well, I like to call it shrubbery. So all the bushes and little growths of things that tuck in here, there and everywhere, I want to start adding them to the layout. Just, just tucking in, neatening up, it'll be fine. Before I do that, I was going to sprinkle on the grass. I've got this slightly darker colour. There's various grasses out there. Just find something that complements your shade. So I have a light green, so I kind of drop in this dark one that it becomes a little bit cutting, but it contrasts it quite nicely. And any big bits I break out with my fingers. It's nice and easy. And you just add it in, and it starts making it look nice. When you go and see a field, it's not just grass. There's all sorts of bits growing in it, isn't there? I'm using Woodland Scenics Finely Foliage in light green and medium green now, and this will be the bulk of the blending in of the back scene. So we have the back scene on that top edge. I'm going to add bits in there. I'll have it by the road where we have any edges we're not happy with. We put it in there. You can even use this stuff for doing trees. It's quite an interesting one. I first saw it when the guys at the Hornby magazine were using it, and there's little twigs in there. And it just makes it look, in my view, realistic. And I love that about it. They've got all, it's like you don't get a packet and everything looks the same. It all kind of looks different in there, and each box of it that you buy, it all looks different. And I use it on my railway in the loft a bit, and that was when I first started using it. And I found it to look great, if I'm honest. I really like it because it's allowing me to model in a way that's slightly messy, and I feel it still looks good afterwards. As you can see here, I can get a big bulk part of it here. I put a load of glue on it. I've got the glue everywhere on that bit, but stick little bits of it all over the place. So the light and medium seem to complement each other really well. You can get some other colours as well, but as you can see here, there's the two tones there, and yeah, it's looking alright. I do apologise for the abrupt camera movements, but you can see here as we're building it up, I wanted to not use a tunnel portal on this, partly because I hadn't really found something that I liked, but utilising these twigs actually kind of build it across the top and hide it in. And then as you can see around the edges of things, the little growths grow. I'm going to have some trees coming into some of these areas, and we're kind of really just building up all the little areas that kind of, there's an edge there I don't like where the hanging basket liner comes down, which I could have pulled it away and made it thinner, but I didn't. And yeah, you can just have some fun and see, it looks like little mini trees growing out of it. So honestly, it's quite wonderful. So when I go to Tonys Trains, I pick up a few packs of these. Probably every other time I go, I pick up at least one of them because I find them very useful, and they allow me to kind of do easy modelling on things. So you can see here, one of the pieces looks like there's a tree growing out the side of this, which is great, really, really great. And just put a bit of glue in there, it dries. And yeah, so I think the twigs, they look like real twigs off bushes and things. So I guess you could probably make this your stuff yourself if you had some of the flock and you mix it with these twigs. But yeah, I can't fault it really. Really pleased with it. I'm using are from Noch. I travel abroad quite a lot, part of my job, as well as going to see my girlfriend over in Poland, and I like to go to the model shops there, and the Noch range of trees are really nice. There's a couple of different styles that I don't see over in the UK. I don't know if they make these trees for Hornby because they look a little bit similar to some of the Hornby ones, but maybe it's just one of those things that do look similar. But I do like the look of them. Some of the ones I glue down with the bases, some of the others I drill a hole and I'll go and wedge it in. This is a nice apple tree by them. I think it was 3 in a pack, and it was like 12 quid for all 3. So I feel the price is actually very good. That's something that I've been quite impressed with. To get the kind of similar trees over here, I find that you don't get as many big ones. Like this one is a really tall tree. It's got the double trunk going up on this one, and yeah, to find ones that look as good as this for the money, I kind of been finding it hard. So please recommend any if you know of any. And then obviously there's these smaller ones. I know Noch make some of the trees for some of the brands that are over here that I've seen, because it says Noch on the bottom, but I haven't seen the large trees. But maybe those model shops just haven't got those in, so maybe I need to look at the catalogue of what's available to me. Adding in the station that we saw in the last one, again, I just wanted to start figuring out what we're doing with things, with adding the trees in place, then adding buildings around them, start getting an idea of what I want it to look like. With that in place, I'll drop the goods building down, so I'll give it a wipe off, because the base of it's going to be there, and we're actually going to glue that building in place at some point, and basically it's going to be living on it. I did have a thought that, oh well, what if I want to use it for something else, but I decided against it. I wanted to add signals, but I knew I didn't have enough time. When doing this stage of the layout, we were on the Friday before the show that was on the Saturday, so I just thought, right, let's get them in, and then that's it, it's done. And then on the next video, which will be after the show, we can then obviously look at getting the signals working, which is kind of fun, nice and simple, and we get it wired up onto the layout. I drilled a 15mm hole. It's a bit bigger than the hole that they advise, and I drop it in place, do the nut up, not too tight. I understand when you do it up too tight, the mechanism does get bound up a little bit, it doesn't always operate. Don't know if that's the case for them now, but I think that was New Junction. Richard had explained that, so I'm always very careful when it goes through. And I also need to make sure that there's clearance for when we end up putting some ballast on these and holding it in place, then we don't want to have any fouling. I think it's some PVA glue, and we need to really make sure you don't get any glue on the little metal rod that pulls or pushes the signal up and down. So when the semaphore goes, if there's glue on there, actually it will stop it doing it. And one of the ones that I have up on my loft layout, I have a little bit of an issue with one of them. It's a little bit sticky in the area, so I'm trying to be really careful. Then using a teaspoon, using some of my ballast that I've previously used, I drop it in place and yeah, let that dry really. On this side so this is the right hand side way of the building, I didn't know what to really add here. I don't want to add more grass, so what I thought, I'd have an area that can have some overgrown shrubs growing, as well as I can put like some barrels in there, some wheels, you know, some bits that they don't need, that they've had to do a little bit of basic repairs on the loco. I don't know, you know, this isn't the workshop as such, I'm guessing it's just an engine shed, but you're going to have surplus things that are either a replacement part that they can do in the engine shed, or just general things. There'll be some old shovels, bits kicking around, and I'll add that eventually, try and make it a nicer scene, you know, a little bit of a diorama. You know, as you go through each part of the layout, you could put a bit more time to it, and I'm a little bit guilty on my other layout. I've kind of, it's all big, so there's a little building there, bit of Scenics there, right, that area is done. And actually, if you wanted to, each little part, we could have something a bit more special. But for now, it's going to have the buff ballast by Woodland Scenics. This is the fine ballast that I'm using for all of my layout. I think it looks a bit nicer, if I'm honest. And I can tamp it down once I've got the glue on there, just to make sure it's got a nice flat layer that's really stuck to some of the glue. Otherwise, when we get the hoover out and we suck it off the excess, we don't want most of it to go away, and I've got loads of grey patches underneath. Similar process here, but we're going to be adding coal to the coaling stage. This is one of my 3D printed coaling stages. I've got some smaller versions of this on my website, doubleO'neilldesigns.com, and that's for the narrow gauge, but this is for the normal double O gauge, and I like adding it in, and basically put some glue down, and then put some isopropyl alcohol over top of the coal once that's in, and then I use some watered down PVA glue to drop in, and it wicks through, and that stays on, it dries, and voila, the coaling stage is done. Adding shrubs around now. The ballast is dried. I just want to add in some of, again, the finely foliage type bits. I can add them if I want. There's also just the normal coarse turfs that you can use as well in here. So I'm just going to go with a little mixture of things, but using my paintbrush, kind of adding in growth area. So wherever the white is, I'll be putting some green. So I've got my foliage here. Just dropping it in. You've got olive colours, the mediums, the darks. And dropping it in allows us to have even more colours on the layout of kind of weedish looking things that are growing. You can spread out as well. Where you don't have the glue, we can come back with the isopropanol later and then add the watered down PVA glue, and we can lock that all in place, so that'll be absolutely fine. I'm adding other little random bits around the track and in places just to represent what we see in real life. You know, green stuff seems to grow everywhere, so we can have green stuff in all sorts of places on the layout. Adding flowers to the layout adds that final bit of colour to the Scenics. Adding the red makes me feel like I'm adding little poppies everywhere, which is nice. I'd have it everywhere if I could, but I know I do need to add some variation, so I will be adding in some whites and yellows in places. But adding in it really makes it start standing out. You can go to town on this if you want. It might start looking a bit messy and that your grass is just yellow grass, but I think I'm adding in, I feel what looks kind of realistic. And if not, if you have to, you could pick it out later on and change it if you really want to. But for me, this is fine. And to break up all the yellow, I'll add in a little bit of red as well, just to make it have that, you know, blend of flowers. You know, if you're walking down that path, you look over, you think, oh, that looks nice. At this point of the build, is getting into the evening, I want to add some people. So I thought I'd use the people that are from my layout in the loft. So I popped up, I grabbed a few, and with the addition of, obviously, a drunk man talking to a lovely little dog, which I picked up from Tonys Trains. I can't remember the company that did it, but it's a cute little pack, had dogs and cats in. I add in various little things like beer barrels and stuff like that, and as you saw at the beginning, some even cars are sitting in there inside the goods shed. So when I'm at the show, when people see what I'm up to, I'm going to have these bits in here. So there's a bunch of boxes. This is from P&D Marsh, already painted up, which is nice. Then add in some sacks, which will hopefully have some mail in there as well. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe it's a sack of potatoes, who knows. But we pop them in place, and then even add a little milk churn, because you never know. And a big roll of cable, which I don't even know how they're going to get that down to the car afterwards, because there's no way with how this all looks. But that's that. Looks kind of nice, doesn't it? And as if by magic, the cars appear with these guys here. And we'll run some locos around. We got my 040 pannier strutting his stuff as he goes round. A little bit noisy. What I'll do is I'll leave you with a few running shots of the locos going around, which I had a lot of fun watching when I was running it. There's a lot of satisfaction adding in some cars afterwards as well, kind of giving it that little bit extra each time we add these little details. And I'm sure there'll be many other things I can add to this, and I'm really looking forward to doing my thing and adding a bit more. I turn the sound device on that's underneath it as well, so you can hear birds tweeting and things like that. That's kind of nice. Then put into the station. We get to exercise all the things that we're going to do on the show. I've got little orange cats just here. It's quite hard to work out that it's a cat. Looks like a squirrel. Maybe it is. Then there was a little black cat next to the signal box. Just all of it really, coming in with the camera, kind of focusing on a few different areas, kind of enjoying the details. This layout is going to go to the show. For me, at the time of recording this, was going to then be tomorrow. I was a little bit stressed, but once I got to this stage, I was really pleased. So it's something that, yeah, I'm very proud of it, if I'm honest, to get to this stage. It's not finished. I've still got some work to do. The platform is not finished, but it's running. Locos are going round, and I'm not complaining at all about any of this. If you liked what you saw today, please hit subscribe, because you'll get to see what's coming up, and hit like, because, you know, if you liked it, like it. Then leave a comment, let me know what you liked about the layout, what you'd like to know more about, what you'd like to see in the future, because for me this has been a really enjoyable process, and I'd like to know if it's helped any of you with your railway needs. And yeah, it's something that I think sharing this is good. If you do like the channel and you wish to support it further, you can with Patreon. It helps grow the channel that little bit more, and helps kind of give me that little bit of support. That's also through kind messages through the Patreon program, as well as channel members. So that's an option for you if you did want to do a little bit more. These are my patrons and channel members. A massive thank you to all of you. I'm very grateful. Anyway, I've enjoyed making these videos so far. I don't know how many more videos will be left for the series. I think maybe 1 or 2, probably just the one. We will see. But it's been good fun doing, and on the next video you will see some shots from the show, and you'll see a few other layouts whilst we're there. Anyway, I look forward to joining you there. See you soon. Take care. Goodbye.